Welcome to Fear and Fiction, where the stories are strange and the fear is real. The first time I counted 12, there was a house standing where there was not supposed to be one. I want to explain how I got to that number before I explain what was standing on it. We moved down to Homestead the summer I turned 19 because my Uncle Reggie had work and we did not. People hear Miami and they picture the water. Homestead is not that. Homestead is 40 minutes south of all of that, out where the land goes flat and green and the air smells like cut grass and diesel. Avocado groves, packing houses, nursery after nursery after nursery, trucks out on chrome before the sun is up. My uncle worked a crew that ran mangoes, and by the second week I was on it too. We stayed on the west side of the city, not East Homestead, where the newer houses are, the west side. If you look it up, you will notice something. That part of town does not really have a name. It is just the part on that side. Everything around it is named and it is not. My uncle told me that himself, first day. He said, "You are living in a place with no name on it, so pay attention." I thought he was being poetic. Reggie was not a poetic man. Our street ended at a block that never came back. You have to understand what happened down there. In 1992, Andrew came ashore as a Category 5 and went directly over Homestead. Not near it, over it. It took 25,000 houses off the map in that county alone, and in a lot of places it did not leave rubble. It left the concrete, the slab, the front step, the pipe stub standing up out of the floor, and nothing else. Most of those blocks got rebuilt, some did not. There's a stretch on the west side where the grass grew back over the foundations, and that was the end of it. Kids ride bikes across them. People park on them. There's a slab out there with a basketball hoop bolted into it and no house. Reggie walked me down there my first week. He pointed and he said, "That is where the Cortezes were. That is where the church annex was. That is where the two brothers had the tire shop." Then he said the rule. He did not work his way toward it. He said it flat, like somebody telling you to watch that step. He said, "Do not count them out loud." I asked him why. He said, "Because somebody will hear you get to the wrong number." Then he went back to the truck. Here's the thing about me. I count. I always have. Bricks in a wall, cars in a lot, tiles on a bathroom floor. My mother used to say I was born adding. It is not a choice. It is closer to breathing. And it is the reason any of this happened to me instead of somebody else. Because Reggie could walk that block every day of his life and never once let a number cross his mouth. I could not pass a lamppost without one. So I had already counted them. I did it the first time I saw them, before Reggie ever opened his mouth, and I had gotten 11. 11 slabs. I knew it like I knew my own hands. For about 2 weeks, that block was nothing to me, but a place I walked past on the way to somewhere else. Reggie and I argued about the radio in his truck every morning. He wanted gospel, I wanted anything else. And some mornings that argument was the whole conversation between us. That is what those weeks were. Ordinary. It was a Thursday in August. We got off the crew late because a truck broke down, so it was full dark by the time I walked back. I came up that street the way I always did, and I looked left the way I always did, and I counted. Out loud. Not on purpose. It came out under my breath the way it does. I got to 12. There was a house on the last one. I want to be clear about what I saw, because people always think you mean a shape or a feeling. It was a house, 1 story, pale green, screen porch, jalousie windows cranked open, the kind of house that is all over that part of Florida. There was a light on in the back room. There was a truck in the yard with the hood up, and there was a woman standing behind the screen looking out at the street. She was not doing anything. She was standing the way you stand when you have been waiting a while and you are not tired yet. Hands down, head level. I did not run. I want to say I ran, but I did not. I started walking backward, and I kept walking backward, and I did not notice I was doing it until my back hit the chain link across the road and the whole fence rang. She did not move when the fence rang. That is the part. Anything alive turns its head at a noise like that. I got in the house and I did not tell my uncle. I told myself it was a house I had never noticed, which is a thing your brain will offer you and which you will take, because the alternative costs too much. The next evening, I made myself walk down there in the daylight. 11 slabs, grass and weeds, and the basketball hoop. The last slab was bare concrete with a rusted pipe coming out of it. Before I went back a third time, I did something I thought was smart. I took my phone, I stood at the top of that street and got it up and counted out loud into the microphone the way you would narrate anything, and watched the screen the whole time so I would have it. On the screen, there were 11 slabs. In front of me, there were 12. And this time, the window on the last one was dark. I stood there with the phone up, watching the screen and the window both. And while I was watching, the window went from dark to lit. Not the way a light comes on when somebody flips a switch on their way into a room. Quick, done. This was slow. The kind of slow you only get from an old bulb warming up, orange easing into the glass a little at a time until the whole room was lit. Nobody walked past that window to make it happen. Nobody was standing anywhere near it. I looked down at the phone, still recording in my hand. 11 slabs, weeds, a rusted pipe. Nothing lighting up anywhere on that screen. I looked up and down, maybe 6 times, and the phone did not care. The phone showed me weeds and concrete where I was looking at a lit window and a truck in a yard. I still have that video. I have watched it more than is good for a person. You can hear me on it. You can hear my voice go up at the end when I say 12, and then you can hear me stop talking for 11 seconds, and then you can hear the fence. There is nothing in the frame. There is a street with 11 slabs on it and a man breathing. So I went back after dark, 12, light on in the back room, truck in the yard. She was at the screen, and the house was closer to the road than it had been the night before, not by much, by the width of a driveway. The mailbox that had been beside the porch was out by the curb now. There was a woman 2 doors down from us, Miss Paulette, who had been on that street since before the storm. I asked her about the block. I was careful about it. I asked it like a kid asking about local history for a class. She was watering plants, and she did not stop watering. She said, "Which one are you asking about?" I said, "What do you mean, which one?" She said, "If you're asking about the 11, I can tell you who lived in all of them and where they went." She said, "If you're asking about the other one, go inside." I said, "I am asking about the other one." She turned the hose off. She said, "Then you already counted, and you already know I'm not going to talk about it out here." And she picked up her watering can and went in her house and shut the door while I was still standing in her yard. I told Reggie that night. I told him fast, all of it at once, standing in the kitchen with my work boots still on. He did not ask me what she looked like. He did not ask me if I was sure. He asked me what number I stopped on. I said 12. He sat down. He told me his mother grew up 2 streets over. He told me that after the storm, the county walked that block with a clipboard, and the county came up 11, and the people who had lived there their whole lives came up 12, and it went back and forth like that for a while, until everybody involved decided it was easier to write down 11. He said, the one they could not find is the one that comes back. He said it was not there before the storm either. He said his mother told him it has been arriving and leaving since before Andrew, and the storm just took away everything that was in front of it. I asked him what happens if you keep counting. He said nobody has told me. He said, that should tell you something. We moved back up to Broward in the spring. Different work, different everything. I still count. I cannot stop, and I have made peace with it. But I stop at 11 now. Steps, cars, windows, anything. I get to 11 and I put it down and I look somewhere else. Because I have found out something about that number that I do not think most people know. When you stop at 11, nothing happens. When you say 12, something is already standing there waiting to be counted. The bag looked old enough that the paper had gone soft around the corners, and she already had it held out to me before I had said a single word. I want to tell you about Sandtown before I tell you about her, because the neighborhood's half of why none of this surprised me as much as it should have. I lived in Sandtown 11 years, West Baltimore. Row houses shoulder to shoulder, marble steps out front that people used to scrub on Saturdays, narrow blocks, the whole city stacked up like teeth. The name's not a mystery. Wagons used to load up at the sand quarry and dribble it out behind them the whole way through. So people called it Sandtown and it stuck. Thurgood Marshall came out of there, Billie Holiday, Cab Calloway. My grandmother could point at the house. That's the version they put on a plaque. The version I lived in had blocks where every third door was boarded. Whole rows of them. Plywood gone gray, the numbers still up over the frame. More empty than full, some of those streets. I walked home from the Avenue Market 4 evenings a week. Same route, 10 years. I could have done it with my eyes shut, which is how I know she wasn't there before. It was March and it was raw. That wet, cold Baltimore does where it gets in your coat and stays. I came around the corner and a woman was sitting on the steps of a house that had been boarded since I moved in. She had on a good coat. That's what I caught first, not a warm coat. A good one. Long, dark, fitted narrow through the shoulders, the kind of thing you'd wear to a viewing. No hat, no gloves, and weather that had everybody else walking with their chin in their collar. Paper bag in her lap, folded over at the top. "Excuse me, baby, hold this for me, I'll be right back." And she held it up, the paper gone soft the way I told you, the kind of soft you only get from a bag somebody's carried a long time. That's the piece of this you need going in. I'm the one everybody calls when something's wrong because I've always believed I can fix it. It's the only reason my hands were full that day and not empty. Groceries for my mother because her knee was acting up again. The reason I didn't take it isn't that I was smart. My hands were full, that's it. That's the whole reason I'm here talking to you and not somewhere else. "I'm sorry, I can't, my hands are gone." She smiled at me. "That's all right. Somebody will." Not, "I'll ask somebody else." Somebody will. I told myself that was just city. People ask you for all kinds of things on a stoop in March, and you learn to keep walking. By the time I got my key in the door, I'd already put her out of my head. I got home and put the groceries away and didn't think about it again for 8 days. My cousin Deontay lived 4 blocks up. Deontay was the one everybody called when their car wouldn't start. That kind of man. 26, worked a warehouse out by the county line, would give you the coat he had on, and then act like you did him a favor. He came by that Sunday and he was fine. 8, complained about his job, went home. The Sunday after that, he didn't come. His mother called me Tuesday, asking if I'd seen him, and I hadn't. And then she said something I didn't understand at the time. "He's around. He's just sitting." I found him Wednesday. He was on a stoop on Stricker Street, 4 doors down from a house I know for a fact was empty. Work jacket on, sitting up straight, hands on his knees. I called his name. He looked up and smiled at me, and it was his smile, all the way his, no daylight in it anywhere. "Hey, cousin?" I asked what he was doing out there. "Waiting on somebody. She's coming right back." I asked who. He looked at me a second like I'd asked him something in another language. Then the answer came to him, and I watched it come. His face caught up to it. "The lady." There was a paper bag beside him, folded over at the top, the same tired softness gone into the paper, like it had been carried 100 years in one afternoon. I took him home. He let me. He walked with me the whole way and talked about his job and his mother and a car he was thinking about buying. And if you passed us on the street, you wouldn't have looked twice. I tried to take the bag off him one time, 5 weeks in maybe, and I'd had enough. He was on a stoop on Mount Street, and I walked up on him without a word and put my hand on it. He let me. He didn't grab it back, didn't get loud, didn't move at all. He watched my hand the way you watch somebody about to do something they're going to feel bad about. "Yolanda, if you lift that, it belongs to you." Kind. He said it kind, the way you'd warn somebody about a hot pan. I took my hand back. "It's all right." And he looked back out at the street. Worst minute of my life. And it happened in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon with people walking past us on both sides. He was back out the next morning. Different stoop, 3 blocks east. That was the pattern. I didn't see it for a couple weeks, and then I couldn't unsee it. He moved. Every few days, another set of steps, and the direction held. And if you put pins in it on a map, you watch him go a slow circle through that neighborhood, the way water goes down a drain. Always the bag, always the same answer. She's coming right back. I went to the house where I saw her, Fell Street, the boarded one. Stood there and looked at the plywood and looked at the nails. The nails were rusted flat into the wood, rain streaks running down under every one of them all the way to the sill. Nobody pulled those boards in years. Nobody sat on those steps either, because there was moss grown down into the mortar joints between the marble, and it wasn't broken anywhere. There's no way she was sitting there. No way, and I saw her. An old man at the Avenue Market gave me the rest, and he gave it like he was tired of the subject. She asked everybody. She's been asking since before I was a boy, and I'm 81. I asked what's in the bag. Doesn't matter what's in the bag. What matters is you took it. When you hold a thing for somebody, you're standing in their place till they get back. That's what holding is. And she's not coming back, so you're just standing there. There's no monster in it. It's a favor. Then the part I hear at night. She got out the same way. Somebody took it from her. The auntie's still out there. His mother sees him, brings him food, and he thanks her and eats it and asks about her knee. He's polite. He's exactly himself. He just won't come inside, and he won't put the bag down. And when you ask him why, she's coming right back. I moved to Essex the following year. I'm not proud of that. And there's one thing I'll say to whoever's listening, because I know how this sounds, and I know somebody out there is about to be nice to a stranger. If a woman on a step asks you to hold something, and her coat's wrong for the weather, put your hands in your pockets. Say you're sorry. Keep walking. She'll find somebody. She always does. Just don't let it be you, and don't stand there feeling bad about it either, because the feeling bad is how she gets the next one. If a crying sound gets fainter, that means it's getting closer. And it took me 27 years and one very bad night to believe my grandmother meant that literally. That's on me, not her. She never once got a single thing wrong that I know of, and I still needed a very bad night before I'd take her at her word. I don't really know how to explain the rest of this without sounding like I'm making excuses for myself, so I'm just going to lay it out the way it happened. Quick context first, because none of this makes sense without it. I'm from Boyle Heights, east side of the river, one of the oldest parts of the city. Used to be called Paranormal Blanco before that, and before that it was Tongva Land, Mariachi Plaza, Cinco Puntos, where all the streets run into each other at these weird angles. Hollenbeck Park, Day of the Dead every November like clockwork. My family's been there long enough that all of that is just Tuesday to us. It's also a neighborhood that got cut into pieces on purpose. They ran freeway after freeway through it after the war, and between 1944 and 1972, something like 15,000 people lost their homes to construction. My great-grandmother was one of them. So what you end up with, decades later, is underpasses, a lot of them. Places where you're walking under 6 lanes of traffic, and the sound comes down at you from every direction at once, and you genuinely can't tell where anything is. Hang on to that part. It matters in a second. My abuela Ophelia gave me the rule when I was maybe 11, and I'll be honest, I only really absorbed half of it. The first half made sense. If you hear a baby crying outside at night and there's no house around, you don't go looking. Fine. Anybody's grandmother could tell you that. It's the second half that never sat right with me. She'd always add, but if it sounds far away, walk toward it. And when I pushed back, because it sounded backwards, she'd just say, those aren't the same thing. And one day I'd understand why. I was 11. I said okay and went and ate dinner the way you do when an adult tells you something that doesn't land yet. I was 27 the night I actually found out what she meant. I worked nights at a restaurant downtown, and the walk home took me over the bridge and up through the neighborhood, 1 in the morning, 4 nights a week. Honestly, it's a nice walk. People don't believe me when I say the city gets quiet like that, but it does. First time I heard it, I was under the interchange. A baby crying, sounded like it was coming from a block over, maybe 2. I didn't think anything of it. You live somewhere dense enough, You hear people. That's not a horror movie. That's just Tuesday night. I went home and didn't give it another thought. Second time, same thing, except it sounded farther away. 3 or 4 blocks, real faint. And this is the part that actually stopped me on the sidewalk, not the crying itself. I could hear it breathing. Not just the cry, the little catch after it, that wet hitch a baby does pulling air back in. I could hear that from 3 or 4 blocks away, over freeway noise, which if you think about it for 2 seconds doesn't make sense at all. I went home and I didn't sleep great. I told a coworker about it, mostly hoping he'd talk me out of it. Beto runs sound for concerts on weekends and knows more about how noise actually behaves than anybody else I know. So I figured he'd have some boring explanation and I could stop thinking about it. He didn't give me one. What he told me is that when a sound source moves away from you, you don't lose volume evenly. You lose the small stuff first, the breath, the little clicks, the fine texture of it. That's the first thing physics takes away. So if something sounds like it's fading, but you can still hear all that fine detail clearly, it's actually not getting farther away at all. It's getting closer, he told me, and turning itself down. He laughed when he said it, like it was a fun fact. Then he saw my face and stopped. Third night, I really didn't want to make that walk. Did it anyway, because it was 1 in the morning and there wasn't another option. I heard it at the top of the block and it was almost nothing, a thread of sound, and underneath it, this other noise, like a knuckle popping, slow, over and over, wet. That's when everything my grandmother told me finally clicked. 16 years late, standing under a freeway at 1 in the morning. Don't go looking. But if it sounds far, walk at it, because far means near. Walking toward it is actually walking away from it. And if you run from something that sounds distant, you're running straight into it. So I turned around and walked toward the sound. It got louder, which is exactly what should have happened if everything I just worked out was true, and it still nearly took my legs out from under me, because it meant my grandmother had been right about something insane for 15 years, while I smiled and nodded at her. 4 blocks, walking toward a crying baby that kept moving away from me the entire time. When it finally sounded like a normal, close-by baby, I stopped. There was a power line over the street. There was weight sitting on it. I did not look up. That's the one thing in this whole story I actually did right. Kept my eyes on the sidewalk, kept walking, and behind me the line creaked. One long, slow bend, the sound a wire makes when something heavy on it decides to leave. Got home, sat on the floor with my back against the door until it got light out, and called my abuela at 6 in the morning before I'd even really decided to. I gave her everything, out of order, way too fast. She went quiet for a second, then asked whose it had been. Sometimes, she said, it's a woman who lost her own baby a long time ago, and it's not looking to hurt anybody. It's just grieving in the only direction it knows how. If that's what it was, walking toward it was a kind of respect, and she'd leave me alone now. But if it wasn't that kind, I'd hear it again. I asked how I'd know which one it had been. You'll know in about a week, she told me. So then I had to wait a week, which nobody warns you about. Everybody talks about the one bad night. Nobody mentions the 7 days after it, where you've been told there are 2 possible explanations, and one of them means it's done with you, and the other very much isn't. I didn't sleep well that whole week. Took a different route home for 6 nights straight, and on the 7th I made myself walk the old way, because I figured if I was going to find out one way or the other, I'd rather just know. Nothing. Traffic. A helicopter somewhere over the river. I called her from the sidewalk. It's been a week, I told her. Then it was the first one, she said. She got quiet again, and then she told me something I still haven't fully gotten out from under. That means somebody lost a baby out there a long time ago, and nobody ever went to check on her. You did. You went. You're the first person in longer than she could even guess. And she let you go. For that reason. I told her that's not what I was doing. I was just trying to save my own life. She doesn't know that, my abuela said. And neither do you really. And you're not going to find out. That was about 4 years ago. Haven't heard it since. But I still do it. I've caught myself doing it in 3 different cities at this point. Anytime I hear a kid crying somewhere far off at night, I just turned and walked toward it automatically, no thinking involved. People think that's a sweet thing about me, honestly. Someone I used to date said it was one of the reasons she liked me, that I'd always walk toward a crying kid instead of away from one. I never corrected her. I'm not walking toward it. I'm getting away from it. Turns out those are the same direction, and the only two people who know that are me and my grandmother. The little brass hook on my back door was still swinging when I turned around, and I'd thrown that same hook myself the night before because it rattles. I need to back up, because the door doesn't mean anything without the house. My grandmother left me her place in Smoketown, and I took it, plain and simple, because a paid-off house is a paid-off house, and I'm not the kind of woman who turns that down over a feeling. Smoketown sits about a mile southeast of downtown Louisville. Named after the brickyards, 9 of them running day and night at one point. So much smoke coming off that section of the city, the name just stuck and never left. Once the clay ran dry, they left the pits behind, and the pits filled with water, and one section got nicknamed Frogtown because of it. I've always liked that part. Here's the piece. People who aren't from Louisville usually don't know. Smoketown is the only neighborhood in that entire city that's been black without interruption since the Civil War. Not since the 60s. Since 1865. Freed people came in from all over rural Kentucky and settled it, and a lot of their descendants never left. That's 160 years of the same families on the same narrow streets, which is not nothing. And you should think about what that means before you buy a house there. The houses are shotgun style. 1 room wide, 3 or 4 rooms deep, straight back, no hallway at all. Front door, front room, middle room, back door, everything in one line. Which means if you're standing at my front door and it's open, you can see clean through to the back door. Every inch of that house is visible from the front step. Mr. Pruitt lived next door, had lived next door since before my own mother was born. Day 1 moved in, he came over, stood in my yard with his hands behind his back and watched me carry boxes for a solid 20 minutes without lifting a finger to help, which tells you exactly the kind of man he was. Then, no wind up at all, he told me somebody was eventually going to come to my door asking for a name. And when they did, don't tell them nobody here by that name. Tell them not yet. I repeated it back to him twice, not yet, just so I'd have it right. And he nodded like that was a perfectly ordinary thing to hand a new neighbor and went back inside. I'm not a superstitious woman. I grew up saying grace over Sunday dinner and paying my bills on the first of the month, and neither one of those habits leaves much room for haints. That's probably the whole reason it took me as long as it did to take him seriously, and it's exactly why nobody here by that name was already halfway out of my mouth before I ever remembered what he told me. I called my daughter and told her about it, and she said something like, "Mama, that neighborhood's old. They've got all kinds of sayings," and we both moved on with our day. 6 weeks later, somebody actually knocked. Middle of the afternoon, bright outside. A man, about 50, clean windbreaker, nothing about him standing out at all. He asked if Odessa Vaughn was there. No, I told him, nobody here by that name. It came out before I thought about it. That's the part that still bothers me. He thanked me and turned to go. But before he actually left, he stood there another second and traced something in the air with his hand. Small, quick, 3 or 4 strokes, like he was writing a word only he could read. Then he walked off. I shut the door, turned around, and my back door was standing wide open, all the way, sunlight pouring clean through the whole length of the house. That's the same hook I mentioned already, the one still swinging when I turned around, the one I latched myself the night before. I'm certain of it, because it rattles. Old house, old latch. That's a real explanation, and I used it, because the alternative wasn't one I was ready to sit with yet. 10 weeks after that, another knock. A young woman this time, scrubs on like she was coming straight off a shift, asking the same question. Is Odessa Vaughn here? This time I didn't say nobody here by that name. I stood there with my hand on the frame, couldn't get a word out for a second, and then it came to me. Not yet. "All right," she said, and went back down the steps. She didn't do the thing with her hand. I went straight to Mr. Pruitt's door after that. He made coffee before he'd say a word about it, which took him a solid 9 minutes, and I sat there the whole time and let him take it slow. What he told me, more or less, is that the house went up in 1879, and there's been somebody in it every single year since, which even for that street is unusual. He said a house that old collects things, and one of the things it had collected was a name. Not a person, he was careful to say. An opening, a space in that house, shaped like somebody, sitting empty a long time, and there are things that go around checking whether spaces like that are still open. Say nobody's here, and you've told them it's available, say not yet, and you're telling them it's still spoken for. Then he asked me something that took the floor out from under me. Was anybody in my family expecting? My daughter was 5 months along right about then, arguing with her husband over paint colors for a nursery 2 states away, calling me every other night for my opinion on yellow versus green like it was the biggest decision either of them would ever make. She already had a name picked out, had it picked since the week she found out. It wasn't Odessa. I need to be completely clear about that. It never was. The knocking picked up steadily after that, so I did something practical about it, because that's who I am. I went down to the Jefferson County Records office on a Thursday and pulled everything they had on that house. Somebody living in it every single year since 1879. Renters, owners, whole families, boarders, even a church that used it for storage 2 years in the 50s. Not one gap anywhere in 140 years of paperwork. I checked 4 of the houses on that same block while I was in there, just to be sure I wasn't imagining the pattern, and every single one of them sat empty for a stretch at some point. Years, some of them. Mine never had. And there was no Vaughn anywhere in any of it. No Odessa anything, no Vaughn anything, not once, in 140 some years of names. Sitting there with all that paper spread out in front of me, I finally understood the thing I'd been avoiding understanding. Whatever this was, it wasn't looking for somebody who used to live in that house. It was checking on a space that had never once been left open, and it had been checking for a very long time, and I was simply the first person to stand in that doorway and hand it an honest answer. Once a month became twice a month. Twice became weekly. Different person every time. Always the same question, always ordinary as anybody you'd hold a door for. By the 8th month, it was every few days, and I'd stopped opening the door at all. I'd just say it through the wood. Not yet, not yet, not yet. I sold the house that spring, took less than it was worth just to move it fast, and I've never once regretted that decision. My daughter had a girl, healthy, named her something else entirely, and I'm not putting that name anywhere near this story. I live in an apartment now, out east, a good 11 miles from Smoketown, in a building where nothing is older than I am. Last Tuesday, somebody knocked. I checked the peephole first, out of habit now, and it was just a delivery driver, package in his arms, double-checking my door number against something on his phone. "Sorry to bother you," he said. "Is Odessa Vaughn here?" So it was never the house. I've had a lot of time to sit with that, and here's where I've landed. It was never about the house at all. The house was only ever where they knew to find me. They're not looking for a room to fill anymore. They're following the person who kept saying not yet, because not yet is a promise. And I've been making that particular promise for going on 2 years now. I genuinely don't know how much longer that word's going to hold. The broom in my grandmother's back room was never once used to sweep a floor, and I didn't understand why until something was standing at the foot of my bed, counting. Let me start with my grandmother, since she's the one all of this actually circles back to, one way or another. My grandmother painted her porch ceiling the same color every single spring for as long as I was alive, and it took me until I was 34 years old to actually ask why. Miss Ida lived in Cuyler-Brownville, down in Savannah, southwest of the part the tour groups ever walk. It's one of the oldest black neighborhoods in that whole city, and the way it got started matters here. After the war, free people came into Savannah from 2 directions. Off the farms inland, and off the barrier islands out on the coast. Those islands are Gullah Geechee country, sea islands, rice and indigo history, generations of people who stayed close enough together for long enough that they held on to their own language and their own way of understanding what the world's actually made of. They built that neighborhood when they got to the city. Row houses, working people's houses, laid out on a grid. Doctors lived there, teachers lived there. The Florence Street School was there. Charity Hospital was there too. First place in Savannah that ever trained black nurses and doctors. They brought their whole lives with them into that neighborhood. Everything they knew, everything they believed, and everything that had been following them out on those islands came right along with all of it, because it didn't have anywhere else left to be. My grandmother's porch ceiling was this pale blue, softer than sky blue, a little green mixed into it. You've probably seen it if you've spent any time down there. Half the old porches still have it. People call it haint blue. I thought it was just decoration for years. Every summer I stayed with her as a kid. I thought it was decoration. The brooms I noticed a lot earlier, honestly, because they never made sense to me. There was one leaned in the corner of every single room in that house that had a bed in it. Hers, the spare room, the little back room nobody ever slept in. Old straw brooms, bristles gone the color of tea at the tips, and she would not let a single person in that house use them to actually sweep a floor. I asked her once, must have been 9 years old. Those aren't for sweeping, was the entire answer I got. That was it. Didn't get anything more out of her for 25 years after that. That's on me, if I'm honest. Not the tired mornings, not any of what came after. I let 25 years pass without ever once asking my own grandmother the same question twice. And I've come to believe that's exactly the kind of person this thing looks for. Somebody too polite to push, or too busy, or too grown to ask again. I moved to Atlanta after school and did what everybody does when they move away, which is get busy and call less. Around 34, I started waking up tired in a way that wasn't normal. I'd get a full 9 hours and still get up feeling like I'd been carrying something all night long. Chest sore, arms sore. Some mornings I'd just sit on the edge of the bed a good 10 minutes before I could make myself stand. 2, 3 nights a week, I'd surface in the dark and flat out couldn't move. Wide awake, eyes open, nothing responding. 20 seconds, a minute maybe. Then it'd release all at once, and I'd lie there with my heart slamming. Doctor mentioned sleep studies, stress, the usual. I didn't argue with any of it because what else was I supposed to say? The woman I was seeing at the time told me one morning I looked like somebody was taking it out of me, and I didn't love hearing that, mostly because some part of me already agreed with her. I only went down to Savannah that Thanksgiving because my mother more or less made me. Miss Ida was 88 by then. She opened her door, looked me over for a solid 4 seconds, and turned straight around and walked to the hall closet without so much as a hello. Came back with a broom, put it directly in my hand, and told me flat out I'd be sleeping in the back room and keeping that thing right beside me. I said, "Grandma, the way you do," and she cut me off before I got any further. Told me not to grandma her and asked when it started, so I told her. Standing there in the doorway with my bag still on my shoulder, I gave her every piece of it, and she nodded through the whole thing the way you'd read off a grocery list you'd already written yourself. Then she finally explained the brooms. "There's a thing that comes at night," she told me, "and it isn't out to hurt anybody directly. It wants your breath, plain and simple. Gets on you while you're under, takes what it needs, and it's gone before you wake up empty and blame it on your job like everybody does. It has to be back in its own skin before the sun's up, and that's the only rule it actually has to follow. So you put something in front of it that it can't leave alone. It has to count, can't help itself. Put a broom by the bed, and it'll stand there counting every single straw in it one at a time, and the whole time it's counting, it's not on you. Light comes up while it's still counting, it has to run. The ceiling's the same principle," she said. "That blue is water and sky both at once, and it can't cross either one. It just stands at the edge of the porch looking up, and it will not come under." My mother painted that ceiling, she told me. Her mother painted the one before it, back on the island. That night, She made me eat 2 full plates before she'd even let me think about bed. Told me a grown man traveling that whole distance owed his own stomach at least that much. I didn't argue with her about it. Nobody argues with Miss Ida over a plate of food. I slept in that back room with the broom set right against the nightstand. Third night, I woke up and couldn't move. Same as always. Except this time, I wasn't alone in that room, and I knew it before I even had the rest of my senses back. There was a sound coming from the foot of the bed. Not words, nothing close to words. A wet, even ticking, going on and on. The exact rhythm of somebody keeping a count under their breath and not caring one bit who hears it. It went on a long time. Then the hall light clicked on. My grandmother, standing in the doorway in her house coat, 88 years old, 4'11" if that. She didn't scream, didn't pray out loud, didn't even look my direction. Flipped the porch light on through the window, pulled the broom out of the hall corner, and started sweeping that back bedroom floor in long, hard strokes, straight toward the door. The ticking stopped. She swept for maybe a minute and a half, stood the broom back up in its corner, told me to go back to sleep, and went to bed herself like she'd just taken out the trash. Next morning, I asked how long she'd been doing that. Since 1953, she told me. I asked for who. For whoever's in the house, was all she said back. She'd done it for her husband, then for my mother, then for a boarder who stayed with her through the 70s, and now for me. Talked about it the same way you talk about carrying a plate down the street to somebody. Not a battle, just a chore that fell to her. Only thing that had ever really changed about it, she told me, was that she'd gotten slower getting up and down the stairs. I stopped waking up tired within about 2 weeks of getting back to Atlanta, and it's never come back since. I still keep a broom in my bedroom to this day, and my wife stopped asking about it a long time ago. My grandmother passed 2 years back, this past March. The house sold that same summer, went to a couple from out of state who got it at a discount because that whole neighborhood's been steadily losing houses for years now. Over 100 torn down in the last 20 alone. I drove down last spring just to look at it from the car. They'd done decent work, new windows, steps fixed up properly, porch ceiling was painted white. I sat at that curb a good while with the engine still running. Thought seriously about knocking on the door, sat there long enough that a man walking his dog looked over at me twice. But what exactly was I going to say to them? Hey, I used to live here. Your ceiling's the wrong color. And there's something that's been coming around that porch since before either of your grandparents were born. And it's spent 2 years now finding the door open. They'd have smiled at me and shut it in my face. And honestly, I wouldn't have blamed them one bit. So I just drove home. Somewhere in that house right now, somebody's waking up in the morning worn all the way down to nothing. Sitting on the edge of their bed, working up the nerve to stand. Making coffee, telling themselves it's the job, or the weather, or just getting older. That's the part I can't put down, if I'm being honest with you. It's not that nobody was ever there to protect them. It's that nobody ever told them there was something worth protecting themselves from in the first place. And the only woman on that whole block who actually knew how to do it is out at Laurel Grove now, buried about 9 minutes from her own front porch. All right, family, you made it to the end. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch the video. If you thought the video was good, please like, share, subscribe, hype the video if you enjoyed it. Get in those comments and tell me which story was your favorite. Till the next time.